Welcome back to another Design League playthrough, and this one looks like an absolute treat. So this is from agrainger12, who's been part of the Dream Team contest, and I think he won or did very well in at least one of the Design Leagues last year with Playa Maravilla, which was, I believe, the treeless contest. Looking at more of a desert steppe vibe, I think this is desert, but it's hard to tell between the two sometimes. And planting looks gorgeous. There's some interesting routing. I like the use of water on those two holes, just to break things up visually a little. And another thing I noticed when taking the picture is I like that it hasn't started with hole 1 in like bottom left hand corner like a lot of courses have on this, meaning that we get this lovely look coming into hole 6 where you're starting to see the first hole over again. Always fun. So anyway, let's have a little look at this. So first hole, we've got some width and we've got a cleverly cut fairway, which is making it a little narrower than it appears. If we want to hit driver, we've got the risk of running out of fairway that side, so you might want to hit partial. I think the spline, I love the idea. I think the actual spline and fairway could be a little neater. So if you look at how narrow it is here, like why would I ever lay up with 5 wood compared to driver? If you look at the amount of width I've got there, even though the fairway's cutting in, that's still a much easier shot than it is to hold a 3 wood or a 5 wood there. And I get that we want to design around this sort of distance, but you want to allow for people to hit the shorter clubs as well. Planting obviously looks really good. Hits all the colours nicely. Those bushes, the kind of steppy yellow ones, and the grasses work. Just everything's working in tandem really nicely. And a couple of splashes of colour to work really well. And the shadows, particularly on this hole, look great. Let's try to hit a little bit of a partial if we can. Partial slow, not what we were after. If we're nitpicking, I think the heavy rough looks a little bit uniform. I think step looks great. Step and desert look great when this heavy rough is a bit more in and out and patchy rather than just dead straight lines, which starts looking a little more artificial. But nitpicks. Green is great, like dead on at this side, so we did want to challenge that bunker on the right. We've got a bit of a backstop to help us whether we go for that top pin position or this one. Hopefully this is the club. And things like that back tier really do help kind of give you a bit more of a bailout shot, particularly if you're coming from the rough and you can't stop the ball as quickly on the green. Shame about the putt, but that's a really good opening first hole. See what we got next. Okay, so now we get the water coming in on a drivable 4. And that pin is pretty much as close to dicey as you can get. I think I've said this on a lot of the playthroughs. I'm not a huge fan of this green slope just dumping you into the heavy rough. I think flattening out this side, like if you miss by an inch, if you land a ball here left of this pin, you should be rewarded for really taking it on and not punished by rolling off. You keep the same playing characteristics of this green without penalising a shot that is actually really good by dunking it off there. Do we go for it? I think I probably do, because again, the layups I'd like you to offer me, I think this hole gets infinitely better is if you offer more fairway and an easier shot to hit, because that second shot, if you're coming in from here, down that slope to this pin, is an absolute nightmare. So let people kind of hang themselves by playing out to the wrong position of the fairway, and equally rewarding the person who, like, I'm all for punishing the person who lazily hits to an open area of fairway without really thinking about whether it's the right place to be or why it's easy, and just like a subtle punishment of your next shot is going to be much more difficult. I thought I would have had enough. Well, I clearly misjudged that big time. And there's a recovery. Definitely some interesting pins on the screen, and the other slopes that you've got I think work really well. A little backstop there, their ability to run it down to this pin, or like this sort of slope where it's helping towards this pin but you have to use it creatively and not leave it up top, but also punishing against this pin if you're coming from this side, I think works really well. I think your green complex is great. I would just offer a bit more room to players to bail out right away from the water, and then I think this hole just leaps up another level. Yep, that was a very timid putt. That's okay. Two really good first holes, and third looks like a stunner as well. I think you can probably start this fairway a little bit closer. I usually go to about 200 at. I typically start at 180 if I can, but if not possible 200, 230 is a bit. It looks great, and you're not. I don't think you're really getting into any trouble, but let's say you've got someone with this driver and a 3-wood that only carries this far and they're playing into a headwind. I guess they're probably hitting drive, but you're not really giving them an option because of where the fairway's cut. I do like that the green is a bit more receptive. You can try to cut a fair amount of the corner. Pin positions wise, I mean it's a 6-hole loop, so less worried about pins than on an 18-hole course. But I feel like you just pulled the same trick twice, in that we've got a bottom of the ridge and then there's a pin. Great lookout. Skyline green, I love. I think you've done this really well. Green sight's brilliant. Planting on the right, I haven't credited your planting and choice of plants, and like also just using very few trees but doing so very well. Like, sparing use of trees is tough. Just think this looks great. That's a slope. Oh, perfect. Go and hit that slope. So it's not too bad. And we got a big old fence and little cattle ranch, I guess. Just lovely little touch, that backdrop, and a great way of using, just embracing that emptiness you've got there. Just very cleverly done. And the mountain backdrop on this course works beautifully as well. We do have some plants encroaching into your heavy rough paths, but it's not a major thing. It'll annoy you too, but doesn't matter. Short par 3. Probably like to see this one a bit more protected. If it's a very short hole and it's a relatively flat green with a big backstop, I think we can do a little bit more to make this shot challenging. I'm not saying I'm going to hit the green, but you'd hope you would. Yeah, I think generally a short par 3 is a great chance to heavily bunker it, ramp up the difficulty and precision requirements a bit more. Centralised bunker. Don't feel this side as a goer at all, at least not with the driver and the wind I've got. Don't know how much I'd really want to be down the left hand side anyway. So I think this actually opens up the green a little bit more. As you can see, we're hitting dead down this, whereas if we're on the left hand side you're across it a bit more, which may be what we were planning, but if so I'd probably make the left hand side of that bunker a little, the narrow a bit. Well, that is not the shot. I got a feeling this is not the green to be hitting from here in. I really like your sloping on here. It's subtle, there's lots of like little bits of yellow and orange and just nasty little slopes, nothing too major. I think it works really well. Because you're not going to punish me by rolling me off a tier or off the green or anything. It's just going to be that the putt that I have is really difficult. And probably not going to one putt unless you're very close. Oh, I massively overread that. But yeah, another good hole. And that green again on a par 5 could have used maybe a little bit more defence. Yeah, I think if I've got one overriding feeling on this course, I would like to have a bit more of an incentive to lay up, or kind of have a strategic play rather than just hit driver. So I think even on this hole, you've got a big layup zone, but if you can carry it all the way here, it's quite a wide landing zone anyway, and there's not a huge amount of risk. That might need to sit. It tried. Yeah, bunkers. This bunker could use a bit of love sculpting. It's not your flattest. They haven't leapt out at me anywhere else to the extent I needed to go check, but I think raising up the back of this one would help, flattening that a touch. Go on, let's see if we can finish with a birdie. Oh, it's always bleeding, right? So there we go, agrainger. Really enjoyed that. The setting was great. I think probably look at some of the hazard placement, I would say. I think you can ramp up and in places and just like shot values, like know that you can be a bit more dangerous on par 5s and short par 3s. The look is gorgeous though, and loved all the off course work, and some really interesting holes. Like certainly I thought that second had just open it out to the right a bit more, and that's got real potential. But yeah, a lot of fun, and like it plays well. Green and reg for me 100% is not something I'm used to, so really enjoyed that. Best of luck in the contest, and yeah, we'll be following your work as ever. Take care.